Alright, so this is a bit of a weird idea. One thing I've always found annoying with space engineers is the lack of any sort of spring block. And I understand there's probably some limitations in the code that make that inviolable to make, but it kind of already exists in the way of suspensions. And I don't know if you know this, but you can actually attach a rotor head to a suspension, um, and from that you can build off whatever you really want. There is some limitations, like because the suspension both acts as a linear slide up and down, and a rotor, and that it spins. It's really hard to take advantage of that linear slide that effectively is a spring, a vanilla spring. It's really hard to take advantage of that because of the fact that the wheel turns. Doesn't matter if you turn the friction, the brake, anything like that on, it won't stop the wheel from turning. And because of the way wheels with rotor parts work, they don't interact with the block they're connected with them. So this suspension is attached to this suspension, but this suspension can't interact physically. Like, this physical suspension block can't physically interact with this physical suspension block. They phase into each other. So you can kind of see, I think it's this, yeah. If we just bring our suspension right up, you can see these blocks just kind of phase into each other. And there's some blocks that are interacting because I've got these split. But essentially, so I was kind of racking my head, like, how could I combine the relatively short throw of one suspension into another so that we can, like, kind of it'd be parallel or series? No, series these suspensions. So in order to do that, because they don't interact with another grid, so say I was to take this, you can see I have a rotor here that connects these two grids. If I was to take this rotor out and just use a block, which there is clearly enough room for, if I do that, when you try and join this grid with this grid, because it's on a suspension, it can't interact with another grid, so anytime you merge those grids, they just freak the fuck out, they blow out, and I can't do that. So you have to have this kind of subgridded off. Anyways, that explains the rotors. But yeah, as you can see, essentially this is just series suspensions that are doubled up in a way to restrict their rotational movement. Unfortunately, this wasn't as strict as I was hoping. I was hoping this would lock it into one axis, but it does not. So you can see over here I've got a quick example set up, and you can see we can actually move. You can see the suspensions kind of work. They're a little bit jiggly. I think more weight would help, but it kind of works. I'm not sure if there's anything real near me. It's not as articulate as I would hope. I do have the strength cranked right up right now. So if like we turn this down to, I think, 8% or 7% with this weight is kind of where they start to sag. So I've been doing 12%. It's kind of where you get some movement. Let's see if there's something I can just drive my wheel up on. You can see they do compress a bit. Obviously the weight of this example is kind of an issue because the suspension is, being that these are in the series, you're using very little of each suspension. So if this was a lot heavier, I'd be able to increase the weight, and I'd get a finer detail. And as you can see, the wheels are kind of kicking off to one side. Basically, that's just because I've got these wheels actually off-centered from it, so I think that's where that rotational effect is coming. If they were centered, it wouldn't do that on flat ground, but it's still going to be an issue. There's just somehow still too much flex in the system. I need like another constraint of some sort. So I might need like a vertical constraint of some sort. I'm just not sure how to work it into this pattern for it yet. But you can also do some pretty cool things that are kind of cursed, and that's by turning on all steering for every axis. You can just like completely flex the entire. And of course you wouldn't be able to do it if this was fully constrained. But it's kind of cool because he can actually just straight up turn on the spot, just do donuts. It doesn't work as great in this direction, I think. As you can tell, the wheels, they're not symmetrical because I only made one mirror of it. I can't mirror it. I don't know if there's a way to like mirror something this complex. Because the subgrids, I couldn't build it with the mirror tool. And if I copy and paste, I can't copy and paste a mirror, I don't think. Maybe there's a mod or a setting that I'm missing. But yeah, it's kind of a cool idea. I don't know. I don't know if it's like super useful for anything, honestly. It's kind of glitchy. Of course, like I say, I've got a really light rover going on. In fact, like, let's just see what happens when we add like a bunch of weight to this thing. Can you like stop moving? Whoop, fell in the hole. I think I have like the suspension the suspension's friction set pretty low or something. I think that might be why it's... Alright, let's just go ham on the batteries. Still able to turn. Looks like I need to increase the suspension with that now. Go up another notch. Yeah, now looks like we're slightly compressed on flat ground. So maybe it's pretty nimble. Like it looks wrong, and it's a little bit kind of reactive. You kind of have to just watch what it's doing and then kind of react to really control it. See, it can flex pretty good. And I think one of the more important things to show is that it works really good at speed, which I find is, with custom suspensions, is one of the biggest issues. Is one, they're not easy to tune to the weight. So because this is using all suspensions, it's easy to tune as the weight of your rover increases. You just have to increase the strength, whereas, you know, with rotors and stuff, you have to increase and decrease speeds and torque values and stuff every time it changes. But you can see, you can take hills at speed and it compresses up and does its thing nice. So you can see I'm like overcorrecting mad here right now. Let's actually check and see what my friction's at. Yeah, 31. So let's like bump this up to 55. This should give me a little bit more. So I don't really think that the turning of the full suspension thing is much more than a gimmick. I think it handles a lot better when you do it this way. But I mean, like, if you're stopped and say this is a much bigger rover and you've got the suspension set up and you just want to, you know, turn 90 degrees to angle, you can do this and just be like boop, and you just do this super short turn angle. But for all other purposes, you're going to be turning like this with, you know, a regular turning circle. Kind of, that makes sense based on the size of your rover, but it's a little easier to control. There's no overcorrection. And you see, like, I got tons of ground clearance on this thing because my whoop, oh, come on. Nope, no such luck. I thought I might fall over. Yeah, tons of ground clearance. Obviously, that's not gonna... Really? That's not gonna knock it over? That should. Alright, what did I break? Some batteries. I should have copied this to my clipboard before I started, but I don't really want to reload a save right now. Alright, there we go. Yeah, like, you can see this is a suspension. Of course, you can do things like... Actually, let's do this. Decrease height offset. So we can do something like this and squat it right down if we wanted to for some reason. And we still have the suspension of the 3x3 wheels. Obviously, in my mind, you can see like we have much less. I think we're actually, my 5x5 wheels might be a little bit too rigid right now. Let's put that up down to like 11 or something. Yeah, there we go. Now they're flexing a bit more. What was I gonna say? Oh, obviously, like when I was designing this, I wasn't really envisioning it with 3x3 or even 5x5 small grid wheels. I was envisioning it with using large grid wheels on small grid suspensions, which you can do in a similar way that you can put a rotor head onto something, or you can use easy mod just to make it a little quicker. If I remember to, I'll link that in the description, but it's just, you can put any large grid suspensions onto, or any large grid wheels onto small grid suspensions. So I had imagined this with like a large grid wheel to take advantage of this whole, I think, let's increase the power a bit. What are we caught on? Oh, it's just... Yeah, see, this is one of those things where I feel like the... Okay, there's no way we're getting up that. The damn frickin' group, how that handles how much everything goes up and down, like goes up by 5%. It's just too much here. I want it to go up by like 3%, and the only way to do that is to change the... Go into the menu and change it. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea. It's a little... I feel like it might still be a little bit too buggy and of dubious advantageous. Because, yeah, you can see it's not really doing anything special right now. It's just kind of bouncing. You can do some weird things like we can do something like this. Shoop. Oh, maybe it's not going to work. Oh, I need to increase my strength. Yep. Which is kind of interesting. I was kind of wondering if maybe it could be... maybe if instead of kind of thinking this as a cursed custom suspension, it could instead be the spring mechanism for some sort of slingshot, because it can deliver quite a bit of power. Like I say, these are seriesed, and presumably I can make this go even longer. If I can find some way to also link it so that they don't twist as much, that would be a lot better. But it's a real pain in the ass to build this. I'm not gonna lie, it's a pain in the ass to build this. But yeah, it's a kind of interesting idea. If anybody has any ideas how I could possibly get these to be a little bit more rigid, or if you've tried something similar, what your results were like, or any other uses for maybe some kind of pseudo spring, because that's basically what it is. It can act as a spring, which is kind of interesting. It's a little bit unwieldy. I really wish there was a way to make it work with only one row of suspensions, but it is nice that it's possible to link these together. I had tried, I don't know if they're over here at all. I had been trying to link them with merge blocks, and basically every time I would link them with merge blocks, they would actually just go crazy. There's some other weird tests I was trying to do. I was trying to make like this kind of suspension system using this, but of course the fact that these can rotate will always be the killing factor, because you end up like this. So somehow if we can arrest the rotational of these wheels, then we could use them as a pseudo spring. But also you can see here, you can attach small grid rotor heads to large grid. I don't think you can attach a large grid rotor head to a small grid suspension though. At least I wasn't able to. Or perhaps I didn't try, I don't know. But you can do it this way, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird suspension. This is not meant to be anything. But maybe there's something in this, if I can just figure out how to restrict it. Maybe. I don't know. Keen should definitely add springs to the game, though. Game needs springs.